Hi, everyone. My name is Aimee Murphy, and I am the founder and executive director of Rehumanize International.
And I'm Catherine Glenn Foster, President and CEO of Americans United for Life.
Today, we have a world-changing project to share with you. Several years ago, we began asking the question of what our culture would or should look like in a post-Roe world. What services would need to exist? What do we as a movement need to do better? And perhaps most importantly, in the process of abolishing abortion, how would or should we, as a pro-life culture, respond to the crime of illegal abortion?
What does true justice in our laws and in our hearts look like in the context of abortion? We seek to answer all these questions in this project, and we invite you to get educated and get activated in this effort for human rights and human dignity. We've worked really hard over the past 2 years to bring this project to fruition, and we are so excited to share with you. Restore the Heart, Healing the Communal Trauma of Abortion Through a Restorative Justice System. Abortion kills close to 3,000 children in the U.S. every day. This legal, lethal act violates human rights, traumatizes families, and brings violence to our communities. In our efforts to abolish abortion and build a world where each and every human being is respected and protected from conception until natural death, we must address how a pro-life system of justice should respond once abortion becomes illegal. Abortion has impacted all Americans, those who chose abortion like me, frequently scared and alone, partners, families, friends, communities. There are unspeakable horrors inflicted upon children in the womb, the most vulnerable human beings, and the most disenfranchised, as they have no voice of their own. All they know, all they can do, is to trust that they will be protected and cared for through the birthing process. Close to 3,000 times a day in our country alone, we know the violence they face, even in the womb. We stand for them. We speak for them. And we know that, according to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, more than 44% of abortions in America are repeat abortions, and 20% are a third, fourth, fifth, plus abortion. We know that there are immediate harms of abortion. The ambulance is called, the frantic voices describing blood loss or clamminess or fever or trouble breathing or non-responsiveness. We know the story of Keisha Atkins. We know all the well-documented long-term complications, the increased risk of premature labor, of placenta previa, the increased risk of suicide and violent death after abortion. The 50-some studies worldwide documenting that induced abortion increases the risk of preterm birth by 130% to 1,200%, with the greatest increase in the very preterm babies. And we know that preterm birth, in turn, increases the risk of so many other complications and conditions, cerebral palsy, for example, by 38 times. National studies from Australia, Finland, and the United States have found a 2 to 7-fold increased incidence of death from suicide, homicide, and violent death in women who have had abortions compared with women who had carried to term. Study after study after study has linked abortion with depression, anxiety, sleep disorders, post-traumatic stress disorder, substance abuse. Studies find that women feel guilt. In short, abortion can wreak havoc on physical, psychological, emotional, social, spiritual well-being. It can be devastating. It can change the course of a life. And we see the aftershocks of abortion throughout our culture. How we treat people, how we commodify and use people, the millions lost, how women, especially in the workplace, are all too often expected to avoid or limit having children. The workplaces and the laws of our nation failing to protect pregnancy and parenting for so many years. Rather than encounter and love our neighbor, we turn away. And the problem runs deep. And both now, as states pass life-affirming bills step by step, as well as once Roe is overturned and relegated to the dustbin of history, once all the legal scholars' critiques from the left and the right are heard by the court, once life is fully protected in the law in at least some American jurisdictions, it will still run deep. How should our justice system treat the destruction of a human being within a larger cultural paradigm that seeks to uphold and protect the human dignity of all members of our human family in all circumstances. How do we adequately address that profound loss? How do we break the cycle that leads to abortion, to repeat abortions, to abortion activism? Our friends, our allies, our lawmakers often struggle to articulate just what justice looks like in the context of abortion. The mainstream media sees upon those times that lawmakers say that once Roe is overturned, women will be jailed, or that the death penalty is on the table. They use that as part of their fear-mongering, saying that we can't possibly overturn Roe because then all women will be handmaids. But just what does real justice look like in the context of abortion?
Now that Catherine has helped to examine the problem that we face in regards to abortion and our collective goal of making it illegal and unthinkable, we have the responsibility to find and build a solution. The retributive model of justice that we have been raised with is based on a statist, impersonal idea that views all crimes as essentially breaking the king's peace, instead of as harms against another individual. The state acts as though they own us, instead of respecting our individual worth. This model is inherently anti-personal, because instead of acknowledging that one human has harmed another, the state acts as if all the harm committed was solely against itself. Our nation has one of the most harsh and inhumane justice systems in the world. According to the U.S. Bureau of Justice Statistics, over 6.6 million persons were in U.S. adult correctional systems at the end of 2016. Over 2 million of those were incarcerated, representing about 4% of the U.S. population, and the highest known rate of incarceration in the world. Yet, recidivism rates are high, around 43%. And when we apply that to abortion, that could result in more lives lost. The system isn't one that seems to be either aimed at or especially successful at rehabilitation and restoration. Another dehumanizing aspect of the US system lies in mandatory minimum sentences. These are regulated and set by legislatures, not judges, and they require automatic minimum prison terms after convictions for certain crimes. By enacting mandatory minimum sentences, our vengeful justice system doesn't see the dignity and uniqueness of an individual human being, but instead will slam down harsher sentences than may be necessary to restore community and achieve restitution. As many of our activist colleagues who have been detained after civil disobedience can attest to, this is to hardly scratch the surface of the horrid treatment of incarcerated people. Regular beatings by guards, abuse from fellow inmates, sensory deprivation through solitary confinement, disintegration of community by cutting off mail delivery, and subhuman living conditions contribute to dehumanization. Some may insist that these awful conditions are ample and fitting punishment for criminals, but as those who defend the inherent dignity of every human being from conception to death, we should confidently push back against such dehumanizing treatment. We declare that our current model of vengeful, retributive justice does not fit within a vision of human-centered, dignity-affirming justice for all involved. Glimpses of restorative models of justice have been seen in history through a variety of forms. The Code of Ur-Nammu from 2050 BC includes some guidelines for restitution instead of capital punishment. And there are historical representations of a restorative model that are even used today. For example, in the Catholic Church's model of excommunication, it's based on this idea of identifying how an individual has already separated themselves from the body of Christ, also known as the church community, through intentional, deliberate, and public sin. The goal of the excommunication process is not to be punitive and vengeful, but rather to point out the existing disunity and work for reunification and reintegration of that member of community. This is often achieved by firstly acknowledging harms through a confession of sin, secondly, by making a penance in an effort to make amends for the wrong that was committed, and lastly, through the grace of the sacrament to endeavor to sin no more, thereby working to reduce recidivism. There are also restorative child rearing methods used in the home and various schools around the nation. The goals of such a restorative model for youth include increasing connection and relationship, building upon teachable moments to develop communication skills, self-management, and building healthy behaviors. For example, in one school in San Francisco, instead of being kicked out or sent straight to detention, students are asked to listen to each other, write or speak apologies, and work out solutions to the offense and the potential underlying systemic issues. These options represent a shift from fear to love and present more restorative options that seek to rebuild community rather than imposing further harms upon the wrongdoer. A current example of a partially restorative justice model within our modern context is the drug court system that has been instituted in various jurisdictions around the nation. In this model, offenders of nonviolent drug crimes acknowledge the wrong they committed, acknowledge their addiction, seek to repair and heal the addiction and harms done through community involvement and service, and work to reduce recidivism by healing addiction and building supportive communities to maintain accountability. According to the National Association of Drug Court Professionals, 75% of graduates of the drug court model remain arrest-free 2 years after graduation, and family reunification rates are 50% higher for drug court participants than the normal for drug offenders. According to the National Institute of Justice, the drug court model is reducing recidivism anywhere from 17 to 26%, and saving our system a ton of money, upwards of $6,700 per participant, because treatment of the underlying problem is cheaper than repeat prison stays. When we see how retributive systems dehumanize and how restorative systems heal, we know that we must build a model of justice that rests on a foundational belief in the inherent and immutable dignity of each and every human being, born and preborn, offender and offended. The goals of a justice system which is built on the respect for the dignity of all should be as follows. Firstly, to recognize and acknowledge legitimate grievance. A harm was done. Second, to make amends for or reconstruct the loss or damage wherever possible. Third, reduce recidivism. Basically, reduce the amount of people who are recommitting the same crime. Fourth, it should be reasonably uniform. Fifth, establish trust in the legal system and in the given community. And lastly, to protect the lives and safety of the community. We should build a compassionate model that makes amends and seeks to generate positive outcomes rather than ensuring a balance of harms. All that a balance of harms does is continue the cycle of traumatization, passing on more harm, and just maintaining the rift in community. The aim of this restorative justice system is to make amends for wrongdoing and heal the rift that abortion creates in community. Since the goal of a restorative system is not punishment, but rather healing, involving all who have caused or been touched by the harm is for the benefit of all. This restorative system should ask how and why the offender violated the offended and address the impact of that harm on the lives of all involved. It should see how all parties were impacted by social structures and institutions. It should organize communities to heal together, repair the systemic injustices, and make restitution for the harm that was done.
Thank you, Aimee. You know, the claim that the government punished women who sought abortions before Roe v. Wade has been proven to be a myth. Nearly uniformly, before Roe, state criminal laws on abortion were focused on the abortionist, not on the woman. State legislatures and courts explicitly recognized women as the second victim of abortion. The irony is that to protect their own interests, it was abortionists who, when they were prosecuted, sought to haul in the women whose children they had aborted to court. Why? If the court treated the woman as an accomplice, she could not testify against the abortionist and the case would be thrown out. However, state and federal laws have provided for civil and criminal penalties for abortionists. While these laws are well-intentioned and crafted to protect women and children, this system does not adequately address either the root causes of abortion or its deep, far-reaching harms. The abortionist's incarceration and fines do not help the woman to heal, address the concerns that led her to abortion in the first place, or restore her relationships. As one recent study by Dr. Priscilla Coleman finds, most women report aborting to make others happy and knew in their hearts that they were making a mistake, even at the time of the abortion. The potential removal of one bad actor from the marketplace does not provide the woman with real life-affirming options if she finds herself pregnant in the future. So where do we go from here to get to a place where the goal is rehabilitation, restoration, and healing? First, let's take a look at where we are, starting with New York. As of January 22, 2019, abortion is no longer in the state's penal code. This means that healthcare providers, including even non-doctors, acting in good faith may not be held criminally liable, even after the 24th week of pregnancy, a time when the child can survive outside the womb. What about Maryland, where I live? My state is very left-leaning on abortion. Still not much to choose from. We do have a viability limit, but if this section is violated, there is no penalty. On parental notice, there are 5 exceptions, including if, in the professional judgment of the physician, notification would not be in the best interest of the minor, no penalty. Okay, let's take a look at Louisiana, the #1 state on the 2020 Americans United for Life list. Lots to choose from. Let's look at partial birth abortion. For the woman, there is no penalty, but she is also forgotten in the process. The abortionist faces 1 to 10 years hard labor and a $10,000 to $100,000 fine. Sale of fetal tissue, 10 to 50 years hard labor, up to $50,000 fine. The states have a wide variety of legal approaches to abortion in their criminal codes, as we would expect under our current legal regime as relates to abortion. But there aren't many approaches to punishment. Basically, there are 3 options. 1, prison. 2, a fine, usually $1,000 to $100,000. And 3, no penalty at all. And that seems wrong. I know firsthand, I had a close family member who was going through a rough time and spent time in prison. I know what they provide and what they don't provide. And these 3 options aren't going to get to the heart of the problem. They aren't going to rehabilitate, to educate, to find solutions to the core issues. Worse still, other states ignore the problem altogether. It's time to think outside the box. Achieving this will require the participation of all the different individuals and institutions who were involved in and/or impacted by the abortion. Major changes should include crimes relating to abortion maybe belonging in a family court or another setting outside of the traditional criminal justice system. The judge may exist more as a counselor and less as an arbiter of punishment. We need the participation of everyone involved in acknowledging the harm done, understanding and addressing the root causes and complex situations that led to the abortion, and connecting all of these individuals and institutions to post-abortion healing and care. In all of this, the victim's voice must be heard and their concerns weighed in on the question of restitution. We need to both acknowledge the harm done and also get those who were involved in the abortion the care that they need to heal. This may require the participation of therapists, educators, and pro-life doctors. When it comes to legislation relating to abortion, we recommend that every bill include restorative solutions tailored to each bill. For example, the restoration process after the violation of a late-term abortion limitation, it could include education on life-affirming options when faced with adverse fetal diagnosis, and connection to the resources available to women facing difficult pregnancies. The family of the aborted child, as well as the abortionist, staff, and anyone else who participated in the abortion, should have easy access to post-abortion healing. The family could also be connected to community resources that can support a woman and her family in a time of crisis to reduce the risk of repeat abortions. And as we know from the success of Rachel's Vineyard and similar post-abortion healing programs, people who go through this healing are far less likely to abort again. Some needs for post-abortion healing and restoration will be more or less universal under a restorative model. For example, all parties may need counseling, education on embryology and human dignity, and connection to life-affirming resources. For example, training on how to talk to people who find themselves unexpectedly pregnant. For each of these people, we can hold up positive examples of women who are thriving after choosing life or after healing from their abortions. However, some roles and some levels of involvement or participation in the abortion may call for additional interventions and healing tools in order to achieve restoration. Two of the main ones. First, the abortionist, including the healthcare team. In the case of late-term abortions, we would suggest continuing medical education in fetal surgery and perinatal hospice. Connection to a nonviolent career. In the case of a facility owner, an abortionist, or any others who may have substantially profited, consider how to address their earnings. Set up a process by which a woman may be able to obtain a refund on her abortion, whether before it has taken place or, in some circumstances, after. Suspend or even revoke the doctor's medical license. And incarceration is an option if they pose an imminent and ongoing threat to others in the community. For the woman, provide for programs for ancillary issues that are rehabilitation focused, in the case of survivors of human trafficking or drug use, for example. Connect her to a larger community of healed post-abortive women. Offer her financial support, counseling for her unique role in the abortion, and life skills training. And through counseling, assist her in clearly evaluating her relationship with her partner and with others in her life. Everyone is involved in an abortion decision in whatever way, and everyone is impacted. Abortion is a communal trauma, so restoration needs to account for everyone. By addressing healing in our laws, we can ensure that everyone's voice is heard and that everyone has access to the resources they need.
As Catherine discussed in her opening, we do not want to see women harshly punished for illegal abortions. Unfortunately, that's still what many in the general public think the pro-life movement is about. Including and implementing restorative justice into pro-life legislation has massive power to shift public perception of our movement for the better. That being said, we must build a restorative justice model into our pro-life laws, not only because it has the power to change hearts and minds for the pro-life cause, but primarily because it is the solution that most aligns with the pro-life belief that our shared inherent human dignity should be the center of all moral action and public policy. This intrinsic value is something that is innate to us as human beings, regardless of our age or our size or ability or race or level of innocence or guilt. It isn't something that can be assigned or removed by governing authorities. This dignity is unchangeable and must always be respected. This is why, in upholding the rights of preborn children, we must be certain not to violate the shared intrinsic dignity of those who have participated in abortions. The difference between the current retributive justice system and our proposed restorative system is not one of degree of punishment, but rather it's a qualitative distinction. The foundational principle of human dignity at the core of restorative justice necessitates a whole paradigm shift away from the question of punishment and towards the task of creating authentic human-centered restoration. Together, Catherine and I developed this crucial proposal because of our own stories. Take mine, for example. When I was 16, I was an atheist, feminist, pro-choicer. And yes, you can see the itty-bitty picture of me from when I was just a mere sophomore in high school. I was in an on-again, off-again relationship with a guy. On Valentine's Day, he forced himself on me and raped me. I was broken by that experience and could finally see how abusive he really was. But March went by and April came, and I still hadn't had a period. I was panicking, thinking that I was pregnant by my rapist, thinking of nothing but abortion. I was a straight A student, a starter on the JV basketball team, an honor band musician, slated to go to an Ivy League school. I was panicking because I thought that a baby would ruin my life. Word got eventually around to the guy that I thought I was pregnant. So one day he came and pulled me out of class. He said to me, "Aimee, you need to get an abortion. I'll drive you and I'll pay for it, but you need to get it taken care of. If you don't get an abortion, I'm thinking that I might kill you." In that moment, I instantly became pro-life, whether or not I wanted to be. I knew that I could never participate in the violence of abortion. But in that moment, when he threatened my life, I understood what so many women go through as they are pressured or coerced by partners or family members, by academic and business institutions. I knew that heaping on punishment was not the answer to an illegal abortion.
When I was 19 years old, I found myself unexpectedly pregnant. I didn't know where to turn. I received zero support, none from my boyfriend. He didn't coerce me to have the abortion, didn't force me to have the abortion, but his silence said everything. I didn't know how to tell my mom, my grandmother. No support from the college clinic nurses who gave me the test. I could see something deep behind their eyes, even then, but they said nothing. And so I made an appointment for that Saturday. It couldn't wait any longer. I was already bonding. I named her. I was scared, out of my element in the clinic, but that is where I found my voice. I asked to see the ultrasound, craned my neck to see the ultrasound. They said no. Finally, I spoke up. No one had defended my baby. Not my boyfriend, not the friends who guessed at what was going on, not the college clinic nurses, certainly not the abortion facility. It was up to me. I did speak up. And as is so typical of the abortion industry, when your story, your plan, your wishes don't match their preordained narrative, they silenced me. They held me down, did everything they could to silence my screams, and forcibly aborted my baby. Her name was Maggie. She would now be 18 years old. Many people who have participated in abortions have suffered severe adverse mental health outcomes. Suffering the traumatic stress of having participated in the violent act of abortion means having to cope not only with the grief of the loss of one's child, but also the guilt over one's personal responsibility in the matter. The restorative system of justice is the only one that simultaneously has compassion on the people who have had abortions, while also wrestling with their own agency and complicity in the killing of the preborn child. The impact of the abortion on those who have procured one is evident in the harmful after effects and coping mechanisms: workaholism, depression, drug abuse, suicidal ideation, eating disorders, and reproductive re-traumatizations. Additionally, those who have participated in violence can often seek to justify it ex post facto by convincing others that it is good and right to have done or to do that violence. The consequence of which is that those who have had abortions may try to convince others that it is a morally acceptable decision. It is therefore imperative that everyone who has participated in an abortion is equipped with ample life-affirming, trauma-informed resources so that we may stop the cycle of violence in its tracks. Programs like Silent No More, Support After Abortion, and Rachel's Vineyard demonstrate that when we heal the traumatic stress of having participated in abortion, many post-abortive people become the most ardent and vocal advocates for life. Because our current justice system, based on a retributive model, fails to address the systemic issues and individual traumas that contribute to the impetus of a crime, people convicted of past crimes recommit and re-enter the criminal justice system time and time again. If we want to end abortion, we must heal the cycle of trauma and address the underlying reasons why people see this act of violence as a solution. Restorative justice is the answer. If the pro-life movement embraces and champions this restorative justice model after abortion, it will not only be a living testament to our foundational principles of our shared human dignity, but will also demonstrate a central, necessary compassion in the effort to abolish abortion. Our restorative justice system is pro-life and pro-woman. It is a model that demonstrates that we don't have to choose between mother and child. We can love them both. Thank you, Aimee and your team, for partnering with me and with Americans United for Life on this effort. I am thrilled with what we have already accomplished and with the movement we are launching through our work on what justice can and should look like in the context of abortion. And thank you to everyone who joined us for what we shared here today. It has been a labor of love for us both in terms of our personal experiences and thanks to our heart for all those impacted by abortion. We would love to hear your stories too. We invite you to break the silence of abortion. Americans of all ages, backgrounds, and beliefs have experienced the trauma of abortion. Still more have contemplated ending a pregnancy. As a post-abortive parent or grandparent, a parent who considered abortion, or as the son or daughter of parents who shared their abortion experience, you may feel alone or isolated, but you are far from it. You may feel trapped in the shadows of secrecy and shame, but you'll find hope and compassion waiting in the light. Aimee and I both work to share healing resources and hope with those considering abortion and with those who have made an abortion decision. Americans United for Life has launched a project to collect all of your stories to end the silence and the shame. I invite you to go to aul.org/mylifestory to find out more about how to share your story.
And I, of course, want to thank Catherine and the whole team at AUL for their hard work and dedication to this groundbreaking project on restorative justice after abortion. And of course, I want to heartily thank all of you who have watched this whole proposal from beginning to end. I'm so grateful that you share a passion with us for the dignity of preborn children and their families. This proposal is just the beginning of a world beyond abortion. And I hope that you will work with us to build this future where every human being is respected, valued, and protected. To learn more, please visit rehumanizeintl.org or aul.org. The direct URL links are in the description below. There, at these websites, you can read the full white paper, get involved in our long-term effort to introduce proposals like this to legislation in the states, and sign on to our statement supporting the institution and integration of restorative models like these in all legal efforts to abolish abortion. When we work together and make our voices heard, we will shift the paradigm of justice and together build a future where the violent act of abortion is a thing of the past. Oh, and one last thing. The Rehumanize Conference 2020 is just mere days away. It'll be on August 29th online via Hopin. Tickets start at just $5 and you can purchase yours today at rehumanizeintl.org/conference. We hope to see you there.